Why did Jesus have to die on the cross?
Yeah.
Why did he have to do it? I don't fully understand why it had to happen if he is God.
Why couldn't he just forgive?
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
A few weeks ago, Pastor Josh Howerton was on the Shawn Ryan Show, and Shawn looked the pastor dead in the eye and asked the question that half of you have thought, but never said out loud, and that is, if God is God, why couldn't he just forgive? No warning, no softening, it was just why the cross? Why didn't God just let it go? And what Shawn got back from Pastor Josh might be the best 30 seconds of gospel that's ever been recorded on this podcast. So let's watch this clip. Then stay tuned because I'm going to take you somewhere that this clip doesn't go.
Why did Jesus have to die on the cross?
Yeah.
Why did he have to do it? I mean, he's God's son. He's God's only son. Why didn't God make another son? We got a lot of questions here. I mean, I don't fully understand why it had to happen if he is.
What Shawn is doing here is so critical for all of us on our Christian walk is that is to continue to ask hard questions. There is not a question that God hasn't answered already in the Gospels, and to be able to have, in this case, Shawn, have a friend, Pastor Josh, walk him through this deep question is critical. All of us need other people to help us understand this better and to be accountability partners. Now listen to Josh's answer.
God.
Why couldn't he just forgive?
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Man, that's like my favorite question to answer ever. All right. So the Bible says that God did it that way so that he could be both. Let me say it and then explain it. So he could be both just and the justifier of the ungodly. All right. So just and justifier. All right. So my favorite way to illustrate this is by a story. Okay. So best illustration of why Jesus had it on the cross I've ever heard. All right. It goes like this. Once upon a time, in a far off kingdom, there was a king who was known by everyone in the kingdom to be the most just and loving king who had ever lived. But then it was discovered that somebody was stealing from the king's treasury. And so the king, being a just king, he sent out an edict that whenever it was discovered who was stealing from the king's treasury, that person would receive 10 lashes. Well, the theft continued, and so he issued another decree. When it's discovered who's stealing from the king's treasury, it would be 20 lashes. Theft continued, 30 lashes. Until finally the king issued a final decree, and he said, when it's discovered who's stealing from the king's treasury, it will be a sentence of 40 lashes. Now, the problem with that was that 40 lashes was a death sentence. And so the theft continued until eventually it was discovered that none other than the king's daughter was the one who was stealing from the treasury. So then a question began to ripple through the kingdom. What will the king do? Some thought he would forgive her, but then how would he be just? Some thought that he would issue the sentence, but then how would he be loving? Well, it was decided. The king sat down and decided, you know what? The sentence is just, the punishment must fall, and so the decree stands. And so one day the entire kingdom was gathered. And in front of everybody, the king's own daughter was marched up to the podium in front of the entire kingdom. And she was bent over the podium, and the back of her shirt was ripped open. And the executioner stood there, and he began to raise his whip to land the first slash. And as soon as he did, the king yelled, "Stop." And there was a silence that fell. And the king strode forward, and he took off his own shirt, and he bent over, and he wrapped his body around his own daughter, and looked back up over his shoulder, and he said, "Now hit her." And the executioner objected, and he said, "But king, those lashes, they'll fall on you." And he said, "The sentence must stand. It's just hit her." And so 40 lashes fell on the body of the king that protected the body of his daughter, and the king died in the stead of his daughter. And what happened, Shawn, in that story is the king was both just because payment for the sin had to be made, and the king was the justifier of the ungodly. She went free because he took the penalty. See, the reason Jesus had to die on the cross is because God is just. And so payment for sin has to be made.
Okay, so we just watched that with the king in the treasury, the 10, the 20, and then 30 and 40 lashes, and then this death sentence. And then the worst possible twist. The thief was his own daughter. And Pastor Josh gave you the right answer. And I want to say that clearly before I say anything else, because I'm not here to correct him. I'm here actually to go further than what he had time to do. This concept that Pastor Josh talked about is actually has a term. It's called substitutionary atonement, where God is both just and the justifier. And that's not just a nice story that's made up. That's actually Romans chapter 3, verse 26. Word for word, Paul writes that God did this so as to be just and the one who justifies those who have a faith in Jesus. So again, just and the justifier, both at the same time in this same act. So let's actually sit here for a minute and think through this, because I don't think most people, even people who've heard that verse 100 times, have actually ever stopped to feel how strange that actually is. So here's the real question that's kind of sitting underneath Shawn's question. And it's not why did Jesus have to die? The real question is, can God actually just kind of wave something off? Because if he can, why didn't he? And if he can't, what does that say about him being omnipotent and omniscient and all-powerful? So let's go there, all the way there, because I think there's a piece of this that even the king's story only gets you halfway to. So every honest person eventually runs into this same wall that Shawn Ryan ran into. And that is, if God is loving, why didn't he just forgive and skip that cross? It seems a lot simpler, and it seems honestly just more loving on the surface. But think about what just forgive actually means in any other context that you already understand. Let's say, again, a judge, a real one, in a courtroom, has a guilty man that's standing in front of him, actually truly guilty, overwhelming evidence that's against him. And the judge says to this man, you know what? I like you. And case dismissed. No penalty, just go home. You're all good. We wouldn't call that judge merciful, we'd call him corrupt. We'd want that judge removed, because we all know instinctively that what he did by ignoring real guilt isn't a display of love. It's failing actually on the one job that that judge has. So that's not some modern legal technicality, that's just what a justice is supposed to be in every century, in every courtroom. So a law that's never enforced isn't a law, it's just a suggestion, and this is the essence of this story. So here's that tension that the king's story is actually solving. Habakkuk tells us God's eyes are too pure to even look at evil. Nahum, he says that the Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. So that's not God being harsh just for the sake of being harsh. That's God being the one judge in the universe who actually takes goodness seriously enough not to fake it. And see, that's exactly why this just forgive them was never really on the table for God. Not because God's not loving enough, because he's not corrupt at all. He's the purest entity in the entire universe. So now, here's where the king's story gets it exactly right, and here's where I want to hand you this full weight, because Josh had about 90 seconds and he couldn't fully go where I think he could have with his answer. So the mechanism that the Bible actually uses is called propitiation. It's a big word, but let's kind of understand this. Back in Leviticus 16, the Day of Atonement, once a year, a high priest would take blood of a sacrifice and put it on something called the mercy seat, the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. And underneath that lid and inside the Ark was the law. the actual record of what Israel had broken. So picture that for a second. The demand for justice was sitting right there physically inside of a box, and blood covering it on top of it physically. That's not the decoration, that's actually the whole gospel, really in just one vision within Leviticus. Now, in Romans 3:25, this same exact concept, propitiation, comes up again for what Jesus actually became. He didn't just cover the record, he became the mercy seat, the place where justice and mercy stop being enemies and start being the same event. So you need to again understand this. In 2 Corinthians 5:21, Paul writes that God made Jesus, who knew no sin, to be sin for us, not punished for sin that he committed. He didn't commit any sin. He became the actual location where that debt and the payment were met. And in Hebrews 9:22, it says this about as bluntly as Scripture has ever been. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. There's not just a nicer way and God chose a dramatic one. There's no other way. And that's not some preference, and that's a law, actually, of God's moral universe. Same as gravity is a law of the physical universe. So let me say that again, because I think it's the whole hinge that this story that we heard is all about. There is no forgiveness without a payment. The only actual question was ever going to be, who pays for it? Now, I want to go somewhere that Josh didn't have time to go, because I think it's the real objection that's sitting underneath this story, and I don't want to pretend it away. Some people hear the king story and think, okay, but isn't that a little disturbing? A father that's inflicting violence even on himself to satisfy his own rule. But here's why it doesn't actually hold up, and here's what the king story just couldn't explain. Because it's a metaphor, and a metaphor eventually kind of breaks down. The king and the daughter are two different people. The Father and the Son are not two different beings. That's the whole point of the Trinity. One God, three persons. Not God punishing some separate guy to let himself off the hook. Jesus said it himself in John chapter 10. No one takes my life from me. I lay it down on my own accord. So this isn't a victim. That's the judge stepping down from the bench and taking the sentence onto his own body by his own choice, because the sentence was never going to fall on anyone else. So what we're seeing here is that this is the most loving, most legally serious act in the history of the universe. God is refusing to let justice just be fake, and he's refusing to let you pay for it. So he pays for it himself. So here's the turn, and I think this is what makes the story that Josh told even bigger than it already felt on that couch. It's not just that a good king found a clever loophole to save his daughter. It's that the king revealed in that one moment who he actually was this entire time. In Exodus 34, God describes his own name as compassionate and gracious, and one who will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. So both halves. It's the same verse, and it's not just this tension that's built in this story, because, again, this is one character, God Almighty. So the cross isn't God solving some random problem that he ran into. The cross is God being exactly who he's always said he was. At that one moment, it actually cost God everything just to prove it to you and I. In 1 John 4, verse 10, this is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as the propitiation for our sins. So it's not us climbing up to God. This is an example of him coming down, taking the lashes meant for you and I, and then standing right back up. I'm so glad that we got a chance to see that clip and that question from Shawn to Josh. And if you watched that clip and something in you went quiet, that's not an accident. That's the truest story in the whole world, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to walk through it together. So I put together a full guide walking through every verse that we walked through and the story that Josh talked about. The mercy seat, the propitiation language, this objection that we always get with this concept, and the Trinity. All of it, so that you can actually study it instead of just feeling it for 30 seconds and moving on. Click the link that's just down below. It'll take you to my Substack. And if you enjoyed the story and got something out of this, do me a favor and subscribe and share this video with others. Also, drop a comment down below and tell me which part of this story hit you the hardest, the king story or the mercy seat. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next video.